Yes.
You know, you said you got a team of 23
Yeah.
journalists. Is there any chance of that increasing? Have you ever thought about recruiting more people, or is it going to get smaller? Yeah.
Well, I think in the current climate we have to be quite practical about everything. I don't see any extra members of staff at the moment because the recession doesn't allow for that. So I think we have to work with what we've got. But fingers crossed. Say that again.
If someone if one of them left, would you get a new one in, or would you just?
I think there's been a policy, because sport is so important to the building, and as I said earlier, it really does drive sales and traffic on the website. To be fair, they're aware that we do have to have a certain complement of sporting staff. So if somebody left in another department, there's not a guarantee that that individual will be replaced. It might be seen as a cost-saving exercise. But if somebody left the sports department, I think it's fair to say that individual, would be replaced in one guise or another. It'd be remiss of them. It'd be daft not to do that. There's just too much to do otherwise. So I think it's fair to say that would happen. But that's very interesting because that's often one of the frustrations for people trying to get into specialist areas like sport, because people love the job so much, they're loath to leave it. And so the opportunities become less and less. It becomes a bit of a chicken and the egg situation almost. But we've just taken on a new person now. An opportunity arose whereby that individual was able to come in. And about 9 months earlier, we also took on another person who came across to us from News because somebody left the sports department to go to work for his father's TV company in London. So, the sports complement will always remain there or thereabouts to that figure.
Do you ever send your reporters out with television cameras to film things and then get them to edit it for the web?
Yeah. When we moved to a multimedia newsroom, that was the plan. It's not so prevalent now because it became an impracticality. Because if you were doing that and editing it, it meant that there was a delay in copy flow of the words for the newspaper. There are production staff there waiting for those words, and it just became a knock-on effect whereby you would miss deadline all the time. So there are specialists who go out now, but there are a minimal number of individuals. So they will go out to press conferences. They will film those press conferences, sometimes live as they happen as well, actually, particularly Welsh rugby ones. But they do go out and do it. But they tend to be specialists within the department now, rather than the writers who specifically write for the titles. We did try to experiment in the early days with these new all-singing, all-dancing Nokia phones, whereby you could video individuals as they spoke, but it just wasn't practical at the time. I think that's another work in progress thing. It's inevitable that's going to come in due course, but it's a work in progress thing for us at the moment, rather than something that we've nailed down definitively.
There's been a lot of, them smaller newspapers, being stopped completely whenever I was doing work experience there. Do you think any more will go?
No, I think we're at a stage now where the cost cutting has been done. I think there's, certainly within our building, there's more of an emphasis now towards driving sales of titles. What I can see in the future, and this is a personal view rather than anything official, what I can see nationwide is a situation where you've got, when I was sort of first breaking into the profession, there was a paper like the Manchester Evening News which was selling a ridiculous amount of copies, like 300,000 a day or something like that, was seen as, one of the blue ribbon titles, if you like. But that now, certainly in the city centre area, is just free, as is the Metro. And I think that the introduction of the Metro has changed the parameters a little bit. And I can see a situation where even papers in general perhaps become free newspapers, which, is something that doesn't sit well with me, I have to say. I think you're more likely to read a paper or advertising a product that you're actually paying for, rather than something you're just being given at a train station or something. But I can see a situation now, the Manchester Evening News have actually set that trend, where that becomes something across Britain, and it may well happen sooner rather than later, if you like.
Do you think there'll always be newspapers then?
There won't always be newspapers, because there'll come a generation, but I can't see a situation where that's not the case. I mean, I would have thought, even though you're all of a certain age, I'd be amazed if there are not newspapers in the house or something like that, so I certainly don't see any change in that at the moment. The thing about newspapers, but you have to evolve with the times, because the thing about newspapers is that you know, the days of being able to break stories in papers every single day of the week seem to have gone now because of the 24-hour news age. So you have to be a bit more analytical in what you offer the following day. But I still think there's a thirst to read about that. But I think there's a thirst to read about it in sport more than any other subject matter. I really do. I don't see that changing. Because, you know, there's this ridiculous sort of volume of wanting to know about A, B, C and D and why Dave Jones wants to sign X, Y and Z at Cardiff City, or why Brendan Rodgers wants to do this with his team for this particular game. You know, I think that will always be there. I don't see that changing at the moment. But, you know, obviously people can look at those things now. You know, people can voice opinions on message boards, on social networking, on various other things. So I noticed that the BBC are doing far more on their own website, BBC Online. They're doing far more of this commentary themselves now, so they're sort of moving with the times a little bit in that respect as well. But I still don't think you can actually beat a big 2-page analysis of a particular specialist subject matter in a newspaper, not at this moment in time.
So why don't the Western Mail lead more on sport? Because sometimes the Western Mail in particular seems to want to lead on politics.
Do you mean the front page?
The front page.
Well,
sorry, yeah. I mean, because, you know, politics doesn't sell newspapers, sport does.
I'd say two things to that. First of all, the Western Mail is, in inverted commas, a heavyweight paper as such, and has historically been for 100 years, well before my time there. So I think there's a feeling of a need to do that, if you like. But what I would say is that I would say that there's not another newspaper in Britain that has sport as much on its front page as the Western Mail. The editor, Alan Edmonds, is a sports fanatic, and I turn that on its head and say that we get criticised a lot for having too much sport on the front page, you know. There's not a day goes by when there isn't a discussion about putting something on sport on the front. I don't think you can lead with a sports story unless it's got significant news connotations, but it very often has a big picture plug on there, particularly with the rugby building up, or if there's a Cardiff Swansea game coming up or something like that. It does have an awful lot of sport there, and I know that from first-hand experience because I come up with what I think are these very good ideas for the back page. I'll pick a particular picture, a particular headline. Next thing I know, it's been nicked for the front page, so I've got to start from scratch again. But I think in more general terms, I think that there's a feeling of the Western Mail is read by the inverted commas people that matter, which include all the politicians and so on. I think there's a feel that it needs to be a worthy newspaper in that respect by leading on the politics. But on a Sunday, I'll be in the office on a Sunday, and the editor-in-chief will ask me, I'm talking about for the news side of things, you know, what he or she thinks we should be doing for the sports page, for the front page. And I'll scheme up on a scrap piece of paper the front page, and I'll put a big sports plug on there, and I'll say blah, 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 and then I'll write in squiggle underneath some rubbish house price story in here as the lead, you know. So we frequently have joviality over the whole thing. I just round off by wishing you all the best in your chosen profession, whatever that may be. I would recommend journalism. I've been in it all my life, and you know, it's one of those things where I don't really give this a second thought. I take it for granted, but I never get up for work and don't want to go into work. Every day is different. It's thoroughly challenging. You meet an awful lot of people. You meet an awful lot of famous people. I've written Barry John's book. He's a Welsh rugby legend, for those who don't know. I actually get the vote in Wales. There's one vote per country for who the FIFA World Player should be. I have the honour of being able to do that. We as a sports department were asked to recommend, and I think there's about 10 different organisations across the country that do this, but we as a sports department were asked to recommend the 10 people we thought should be on the BBC Sports Personality of the Year list, which obviously is the programme that will go out in December. There's an awful lot of rewards that do go with it. But first and foremost, get your degrees, work hard for those. If I have one regret in my life, it's actually that I didn't go to university myself. I actually went straight into my own NCCJ pre-entry course, and then sort of straight into journalism, if you like, at 18. But I think you're doing the right thing. Just work hard, get your degrees, and then make your choices from there. But it certainly is a rewarding profession, and if you can specialise in sport, I don't think you'll be disappointed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.